Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a tutorial now on Soap Calc and calculating soap recipes. Now, this is for anyone that is a very, very beginner and has never worked with Soap Calc or anything like that before. Just want to know where to go, how to use it, what to put in, how to kind of create recipes. You can create recipes very, very easily. You don't have to be an expert in fatty acid profiles or anything like that. All you need to be able to do is understand what to put into your soap calculator. I'll give you a very basic recipe with this one that you can then take forward and use. But this is a really, hopefully, simple way of creating recipes or checking recipes that you find in magazines or online, just to make sure that they are absolutely right and that there hasn't been a typo and you're not going to have a dangerous soap. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into our browser here. So I've just got Google up here and I'm going to go from the very, very beginning. So I'm not expecting you to know where to go to. This is right from the beginning. So we're in my lovely Google here, and you'll probably guess it is night time. But let's just type into here Soap Calc, just like that. And there we go. We have a Soap Calc come up here. Now, depending on your settings and stuff like that, you may get to the home page, or you might go straight to the recipe calculator. I'm going to click on that link just there and it brings us through to this page. Now people will go, oh my god, it's not what it looks like. It's fine. This is the front page for the website that contains the soap calculator, and it's called the recipe calculator. So up here you'll see it says recipe calculator. Click on that, get rid of the ad, and voila, we are into our soap calculator. Now this is the one that everybody knows, and it's probably where most people start because it's the most well advertised one on sites and blogs and things like that. But there are lots of them. There are apps you can have on your phone, but what you need to understand is that they're all slightly different. They're all slightly programmed slightly differently, and you may find that another one gives you a better result than this one does. That's fine, but find one that works for you and stick with one of them if you can, and try not to chop and change because they will be slightly different. But apart from that, it's really simple to use. So what we've got here are 6 or 7 sections with the type of lye we're going to use. Now, if you're a beginner, you're probably going to be looking at doing cold processed soap, and for that you're going to need sodium hydroxide or NaOH. If you then want to go into either hybrid soaps or liquid soaps, you'll start using potassium hydroxide or KOH. But it is set up initially with sodium hydroxide already flagged for you, so you don't have to do anything in number 1. Number 2, we have our weight of oils. Now, for most people in the UK, and I would push people, anybody across the world, to use grams. It has a far better way of getting an exact number, and you can increment it far more easily than doing pounds or ounces. But work with what you are used to using. I would merely say try and use grams. Now, it is set up, it's an American site, so if you're in the UK and you want to work in grams, you need to set your weight of oils here to grams. Now, the weight of oils is the weight of the oils you're going to use, not the entire batch. Now, when you calculate a mould, you're calculating a mould for an entire batch. All right. So what you have to do is you have to kind of tweak things for that mould. So the big mould, the wooden mould you get from Amazon with the kind of pink, purple or black liners, I'll put one up on the screen now for you to have a look at. These ones, roughly, I think it's 1,100 grams, so 1.1 kilos of batter will go into that, but it's not 1.1 kilos of soap. Now, I have a little green mould like this one on screen here, and that one holds roughly 500 grams, and in order to get the right amount of kind of batter for that one so it doesn't fill right up to the top and I'm trying to slosh it everywhere, I work on about 450 grams of oils, and you'll see a little bit later on what the batch weight, the full batch weight, will be with all of the ingredients. But here you're going to put the amount of oils you want to use. So I'm going to put 450 in there, and that's going to work out for my little mould how much batter I'm going to need. So number 3 is water. Now, water is, it's a very torrid conversation that people have, and they talk about you must use lye concentration, you must use 30%, or you must have 1.8 to what. Water is subjective in soap, okay? People talk about a water discount. What they're really meaning is the normal amount of water that I use, I take some of that away so I can control what my soap does. Okay, water is just about controlling soap. The more water you have, the more fluid your batter will be, but the more chance you have of having glycerin rivers. The less water you have, the more chance you have of no glycerin rivers, but it will set up quicker and you may not be able to do certain techniques with it. Okay, so it's a kind of trade-off, and you need to find your own sweet spot for water. Okay, I like to use the water to lye ratio, okay, which is the bottom one just here. And the way that you type that in is really easy. I like 1.8 times water to the amount of lye I'm using. So if I put 1.8 into here, followed by a colon, and then 1, that will give me my water to lye ratio. So when we talk about master batching is taking, for me, the same quantity of lye with the same quantity of water. You must never have less water than you have lye. They must always equal the same, okay? And you can make a soap like that, but it will trace quite quickly. So you up the water content in order to get more working time with your batter, and then you have a little bit more of a cure time at the end of it. So I always work on 1.8 to 1. Now, if you've noticed at the beginning, and I'll put a little pop up on the screen here, it started at 38%. Now 38% is way too much for cold process, but it's plenty enough for hot process. So if you're doing a cold process technique, you need to make sure that that water percent of oils is down at about 30%. But as I say, I work on the water to lye ratio. I can tweak that far easier than trying to work out what my lye concentration is or what my water percent of oils is. I don't want to bother with that. I just want to go, okay, yeah, I've got 1.8 times the amount of lye, but actually I kind of want to speed trace up a little bit. I'll bring that down to like 1.6, or I want a little bit more working time. I'll set that to 2 to 1. So you can tweak the water to lye ratio, I think, far easier than you can kind of dealing with lye concentrations. But again, this is the way I do it. You can do it your way, but get used to just using it. Chuck out some recipes, read the recipes and understand what's going on with them, okay? Next we have our superfat. Now 5% superfat in cold process soap is the kind of standard that you do. You can up that, you can lower it. I wouldn't lower it too much because you do want a little bit of oils. It gives you a nice feeling, particularly with things like beard soaps. That does give you a really nice feeling in the beard, so I wouldn't worry too much about getting rid of the superfat. Leave it at 5%. The one thing I would do though, where it says fragrance, just put a 0 in there. You don't really need to know what the fragrance is, because what you want to understand is how much your batter is going to weigh, and realistically you want to weigh your batter, because what you will get might be slightly more or slightly less than you actually have, and work out your fragrance from everything you've got going on. But I would work out the fragrances separately, and for your first few soaps, don't add any colour, don't add any fragrance, just work on emulsion and understanding when your batter comes to emulsion. That will help you so much in the long run, I cannot tell you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all done, and we're good to go with those ones. Next one, we're looking at adding into our recipe. Now, number 5, you don't really need to worry about. This is just kind of information here about the oils that you're going to be putting into your recipe and their fatty acid profiles. Now I will do a fatty acid profile video a little bit later on to tell you kind of like how you can read those fatty acids and understand what your soap might be like, but you don't need to have that information. You don't need to worry about that right now. All we need to do is go on to number 6, and if you're if you can load recipes, have recipes kind of ready to go. I don't do that. I have them here and then I print them out, so you don't need to worry about that. But here we're going to add the oils from this section into here as different items on in different lines. So I'm going to give you a 5 oil soap recipe, and you can then tweak that as you need with the different oils. Now you can see here we go from everything from Abyssinian oil, Now, I've never squeezed an Abyssinian. I don't know how much oil they'll give you, but it might be something that we need to find out together. Anyway, you go from Abyssinian oil to, is that Zapot seed oil? So you can see there is a wide range of oils that you can use in soaping. I mean, a huge amount of oils that you can use in soaping. I don't quite know about Cuba oil. I don't know about what else we've got in here. Sea buckthorn oil is a lovely oil, but it's very expensive. You've got safflower, rice bran, poppy seed, plum kernel, pecan, pretty much every oil you can imagine. I think it even has some of like the you can get like multi-oil mixes from people like Brambleberry in the US, and I think this has some of those in there. Anyway, I'm going to give you a really simple recipe here. We're going to start with olive oil. Olive oil is a really good oil to start soap making with. Lots of moisturising properties. Will give you a semi-hard bar, but it doesn't lather particularly well. But because of the moisturising properties, we want that in there because we're going to put coconut oil in as well. And those two are pretty much the two oils that almost every soap maker will use unless they're making something for somebody that has a coconut allergy. But if you have a coconut allergy, you can swap your coconut oil out for either Babassu oil, which is quite expensive. You can put lard in there if you don't mind animal products, or you can use, I think it's shea butter as well, and works quite well in there. But I'll check that and I'll put a note on the screen if it's different. So we're going to put those two in. So all you do is you're going to scroll down until you find your first oil. Now let's go to coconut oil, and there are 3 coconut oils here. Okay, you need the top one, the 72 degree. 72 degrees is the temperature in Fahrenheit that oil will melt at. Most oils that you'll get in the supermarket that have a coconut fragrance to them will be a 72 degree oil. The 92 degree is hydrogenated and it's refined and therefore doesn't have that coconut smell to it. And fractionated coconut oil is liquid continually. It never becomes a solid because of the way that it's been processed. So the one that you need for this recipe is coconut oil 76 degrees and will pretty much be the one that you need full time. Anyway, with coconut oil selected there, we are then going to go to the button here that says add. Click that and it pops into the first one here. That easy. All right. Next one is olive oil. So this is in alphabetical order. We scroll down and we get to our olive oil. Now there are 2 here, olive oil and olive oil pomace. Olive oil is any olive oil which is a single oil made completely of olives. It could be virgin, it could be extra virgin, it could be first press, last press. All of those ones are fine. If the packet or the bottle that you buy your oil in says pomace olive oil, then you would need to use the olive oil pomace button. Quite often in the UK at the very least, pomace oil is blended with something like rapeseed or sunflower oil. Avoid pomace olive oil, just buy a standard olive oil from any supermarket and you'd click the olive oil button. They'll all work exactly the same and you click your little add button. So we've got our first 2 oils in there, which are fabulous oils and I absolutely love them. Now, I also like to add castor oil into my soap. Now there is debate around castor oil and how much you add into it. Now you shouldn't really add more than 10%. Castor oil helps support bubble. It also has moisturising and conditioning content with it, but it's a really good oil to help really boost the kind of bubble. So the bubble that your kind of coconut oil and your olive oil are trying to certainly your coconut oil trying to boost, the castor oil will support it. Now I just add that in here. So we're going to go up to C and we're going to find castor oil and we're going to click our little add button. Easy. That's really all there is to it. So we've got those ones and there are 2 more oils that I'm going to add. I'm going to add some grapeseed oil. Now I love grapeseed oil because it's a relatively inexpensive oil that you can get from a lot of soap making supply stores. You can get it from Amazon. It's relatively cheap. It's actually a lot cheaper than olive oil at the moment. It has similar properties and it works very well, and I find I don't get any dreaded orange spots or DOS, which is where you might get a slight kind of orange dotting through a soap. It's often a sign that the oils you used were possibly on the turn or they were rancid. And there are other reasons for dreaded orange spots that I don't need to go into. but I tend not to, I find that my grapeseed oil doesn't give me that, so I'm going to pop that in as well. And my final oil that I'm going to add is a little bit of cocoa butter. So this is a lovely vegan suitable oil because it has none of those nasties in there. It also doesn't contain any palm oil. Now, one thing on palm oil I will say, responsibly sourced palm oil actually supports the farmers that make it, and it helps with reforestation. So if you do use palm oil and you use responsibly sourced, you are not contributing to all of that kind of horribleness that you hear on the news. Please, please, please do your research around palm oil. I know a lot of people don't want it in their products, and that's absolutely fine. So this is why I'm doing this. I personally, in the products that I use, have no problem with responsibly sourced palm oil or responsibly sourced palm kernel oil. And that's entirely up to you. Now, I would normally have something like lard in here as well, because I'm fine with animal products, but again, a lot of people aren't. So this is a really beautiful kind of soap for people that want to start soaping, want a very simple recipe, and it allows you a bit of tweaking to kind of find out where you need to be. So what we're going to do is then we're going to put some percentages in. Now, working in percentages with soap is so much better than working with grams or ounces, because what it does is it allows you to kind of tweak your soap quite easily, and then you can scale up and down. If you've got grams and you want to scale it up, you've got to double use percentages, and this will work everything out for you, and you can tweak it a lot easier. Okay, so our coconut oil, I'm just going to put 25 in here for a second. My olive oil, I'm going to put 25 in. My castor oil, I'm going to put 5. My cocoa butter, I'm going to put 15. And what have we got? 25, 50, 60, 70. Let's just put 25 in there. Up to 20, and that will be our 100%. Now we're going to tweak these a little bit, but bear with. Now you've got all your kind of amounts in here. We're going to click on our calculate recipe. Now it gives me the total down here and all my grammages here. Now let's say, for example, I'd only put 20% in here, 20% in here, we're under, and I click calculate recipe. A little pop-up at the top here says total percent does not equal 100, this total here. Adjust by adding 5%, which means you just need to add 5% into any of these. Now let's say I put 8% in and I try and calculate the recipe again. It pops up and says total percent does not equal 100, adjust by taking away 3%. So it will always tell you what percentage you're at, okay, and you can always adjust accordingly. Okay. So we need to do that one and calculate recipe, and there we go, we have our recipe going on there. Now this is a really basic recipe where everything is pretty much equal apart from the cocoa butter, which is a little bit less, but it's equal parts. Give it a go, see what you think to it and see what you like about it. It might be that it traces too quickly for you, it might be that it traces too slowly for you, it might be soft coming out of the mould, it might be too hard coming out of the mould, it might need this, that. Give it a go and just see how that recipe works. If you're then not happy with it, go, okay, I think 25% coconut oil is too much. I'm going to reduce that to 20. But I am going to put a bit more grapeseed oil in, so I'm going to put 30 in there. I'm going to recalculate my recipe. So you can tweak this according to what you want. Now, what you will notice on this side over here, we have a hardness, cleansing, conditioning, bubbly, creamy, iodine, and INIS number over this side, and these are good indications of kind of where you need to be. What we'll do is we'll go through, I'm going to change this back to 25 here and 25 here. We're going to calculate our recipe, and then I'll show you where those kind of numbers sit in and how to kind of tell if you've got a relatively decent soap by just looking at those numbers. So once you get to this point, you know the sheets. You always see people that present on like blogs and stuff like that, where you see the kind of Soap Calc thing. You get that by clicking on here, view or print recipe. Click that, change over to our recipe. I'm going to zoom a little bit in there for you so you can see this. Now, this is our recipe all done. It's done and dusted. We've done all of that hard work, and this presents our kind of final recipe to us, and this is where we can just check and see. Now, this is not done and dusted. If you wanted to go back, you would close this window down, and your other thing is just in this tab here. So it never closes the tab that you were working on down, it just presents it into a new tab for you. So that's our old one there, that's our old one, and this is where our Soap Calc recipe is. Now, I'll go run through this. Our total oil weight was what we put in at the beginning. Okay, and we did our water to lye ratio at 1.8 to 1. Now it'll show you here that your lye concentration is 35% or 35.5, something like that, and your water percent of oils is 24.9. So it gives you all of that information on here, so you know exactly what you've got and you get all of that information. So if you find a recipe that really works and they use a lye concentration, once you put it into here, you'll find out what your water to lye ratio is and so on and so forth. It's great fun. Also gives us a saturated to unsaturated ratio here. Now, some people will say they like it to be a 50-50. Some like to be higher on one, lower on the other. Basic rule of thumb, a saturated fat will give you bubble and cleansing, and an unsaturated fat will give you conditioning and moisturising. I think I've got that the right way around. If I haven't, I'll pop it on screen. And then we've got the other bits and pieces here. But this section here is really what you're kind of interested in, as well as here. So this will tell us exactly how much water in both pounds, ounces and grams you need for your soap. It then tells you what your sodium hydroxide amount should be, and your oil amount should be 450, giving you a total of 62479. So that will give you exactly how much of each product you need, water, sodium hydroxide and oils, in order to make a batch of that size. Now, bearing in mind, you're going to make your soap and then you're going to cure it for 4 to 6 weeks, so it will lose water weight. But your initial batch, when you come to put it into the into your mould, is going to be that 624.79 grams. So that's where you need to be. So once you've done this and you've made one, whether you've got, if you've had way too much batter, you can adjust your amount of grams of oils. If you haven't got quite enough, you can up it. So you can always tweak it, but do something quite simple first, and you can always tweak from there. You don't have to do lots of maths. In fact, you don't have to do any maths for this, apart from your fragrance oil, which is really easy. All right. And then what we've got here is we've got our oils that we're going to use, all 5 of them, the gram weight of each one that you need to put into your recipe, and again it confirms the total down here, and your oil total up here, 450, 450. So it kind of does a nice roundabout thing for you. So when I was talking about the kind of hardness, cleansing, conditioning, bubbly, creamy, iodine and INIS, these give you these kind of ranges, okay? And when I first started, I was always kind of told, if you can just aim for somewhere in the median, in the middle of those ranges, you should have a relatively good soap. Some people will say you want higher, lower, this, that. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. And you can, once you've started making some soap and you can see that if you like your hardness a bit more or your cleansing a bit, you can always tweak it. But in the middle of those figures is going to be quite good. So a hardness 29 to 54, we've got a 39. It's in the middle. It's probably going to be on the softer side than the harder side, but it's still going to be quite good. We've got a cleansing of 17, which is around about in the middle. 44 to 69 for conditioning, 58, great. 14 to 46, we've got a 21. 16 to 48, we've got a 27. That's creamy. I mean, you can have that down, you can have that up, but it's still in the middle of the two. Iodine is between 47 and 70, and we've got 68, so we're on the higher end of that, but we're still within the 2 numbers. And the INIS is, I always look at that as your kind of your average. Your average soap should be between 136 and 165, and we've got a 143. So all of my little bits are in between that, and you can tweak from there up and down as you need to. Okay, so that's the really important thing here, is that there is a right way of making lye solution. There is a right way of combining your soaps within 10 degrees of each other, so you're not accelerating the batter too much, and you can control the trace. But apart from that, some people prefer some things, other people prefer another. It's not a hard and fast rule that you must make this soap this way. It's your recipe, you tweak it. I like to share recipes because I have no problem in people knowing most of my recipes. I won't say all of them, but most of them. And also I like to show people how to do this, because it's the way that you can then start creating your soaps for your family, for your friends, and then eventually, if you want to, and you've got a few soaps under your belt, and you think, well, I'd like to take this further forward and start selling, then we can delve into that, because that's a whole other can of worms. All right. So once you've got this, you can add your name in the top here. You can give it a name. You can add any additives in here that you wish to put. So something like that. And then you've got a little space here for notes. I'm just going to zoom out a wee bit. Then you've got a show graph, a hide graph, and a print recipe down at the bottom here. You don't really need to worry about these, but if I click on show graph, it'll just give you all this information here as a nice graph. It'll give you all of your fatty acids as a graph, but you can hide that, and then you can click on print recipe down at the bottom here, or even up at the top here, and that will open up your print dialog box, and you can print that out. Okay, so that's really how using Soap Calc to create a recipe can work for you. You can see it's very easy. You can put all of those oils in. If you've got like lots of oil sitting around and left over and you want to use them up, you can then use the grammage bits. Okay, I've got 50 grams of that. I put the oil in, so I put my oil into here. I click the little dot here, and then I can add my grammages rather than my percentages. But for the most part, if you can work on percentages, it does hold you in a far better way than doing the grams. And you will see that here you do have your percentages listed. So if you do like a soap that you make, one random soap that you go, oh my goodness me, that's the best soap I've ever used, you can see there that works for you. You've got all of your things you need in here. You can always go back into here. You can change that. Let's change that to that. Calculate recipe. View or print. Takes you to this one, and it changes the percentages. Now, if you want to have several different versions of it, you go into Soap Calc here. You click on multiple tabs. Let's change that to 15, and let's change that to 25. Sorry. Calculate recipe and view print. It gives you a second tab. So if you don't want to lose the information you've had, just make sure you click that one. But that's how easy it is to use Soap Calc, and hopefully that will help you to develop your recipes and be able to get some really lovely soaps that you enjoy using for your friends, for your family, and for yourself. So soapsters, until next time, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell icon to get notified of when a video is uploaded. And until next time, soapsters, we'll see you soon.